Your Creative Push, episode 117.
Everybody's got their own way, and I think if you search for your own way and you eventually find it, you get so much fulfillment out of it.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngmin Brown, and my guest today is Lois van Baarle, aka Loish. Lois is a freelance illustrator and animator living in Utrecht, the Netherlands. She has lived all over the world, including the United States, Indonesia, France, and Belgium, and she is widely known online as Loish, and has become a sensation in the digital art world. Her first published collection of her works is called The Art of Loish and was successfully funded on Kickstarter in 2 hours. And first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. But what was that like to essentially sell out and get that kind of a support in just 2 hours?
Thanks for having me, first of all.
Of course.
And that was just I think just the highlight of my whole art career. That was just amazing. I just couldn't believe it. It was very surreal, especially because it was so fast. I kind of expected it to be funded, to meet the funding goal, but within such a short period of time, that was crazy.
Absolutely. And that just goes to show what kind of a support you have. You have some kind of insane numbers. I don't know if that ever affects you kind of emotionally or puts pressure on you, but not only is there a lot of people, but they just love you so much. You know, they love your work and they love your kind of message.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually felt really good about it because I hadn't really, my boyfriend has been saying for years, you should really, do something with that fan base, try to get something out of it, try to sell something. And I was always I don't know, I don't really want to, just putting, he would suggest things like Patreon, for example. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people suggest that to me. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I like making stuff and just sharing it for everyone to see. But so I waited so long to sort of push a product, I guess, so to speak. That art book was one of the first things that I really sort of created for that fan base. And the positive feedback just made it so worth it. All those years of just thinking, how am I going to do this? And what would people like to see? What has added value? It was just so fantastic. Just really warms my heart thinking about it now again.
And it's just so cool to have just you do create a lot of work, but to have this kind of tangible thing that, people can hold and add to their bookshelf. I think it's really cool. People can still get that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The art book is still available. It's we sold out the first edition, or the first, not the first edition, but the first printing. Mm-hmm. And they're back in stock now on Amazon and on the 3D Total web shop.
So cool.
Yeah.
And we'll have all that linked at yourcreativepush.com/Loish. Could you maybe take us back to your first or one of your first creative moments and tell us that story?
Well, I thought that was kind of that's kind of hard to pinpoint because I've been drawing my whole life. And I guess I've been creative for as long as I can remember. I think a good example of one of my first creative moments, and I also wrote about it in the book, so I thought it was a really good example, is when I was in kindergarten. I was drawing a person forward facing, and I was sort of struggling with it. So one of the legs ended up way shorter than the other leg. And my kindergarten teacher came over and she was like, "Oh, Lois, good job with your drawing." And all of my classmates came around, we were 5 years old. And one of them was like, "One of the legs is shorter than the other." And I was like, well, that's because they're taking a step forward. And my teacher was super impressed with that. She was like, "Wow, Lois gets perspective at such a young age." But the funny thing is that I didn't intend for it to look that way. I just made it up. I was like, whatever, this will make it look better. And I think it's a really good moment when I think back on it, because I think that drawing, it's a lot of if you'd like to draw rough and you like to sketch, you get a lot of lucky mistakes. And it's really not, you can sort of push beyond your talent and go a little bit further than what you're sort of capable of by seeing those lucky mistakes and making use of them and sort of manipulating them in your favor. And I always thought that was a good moment, because it's not just skill, it's also how you present your work, how you talk about your work, that adds to your creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And going along with that, once you're finished doing it, once you're finished taking the pressure off of yourself and allowing yourselves to make mistakes, then you can kind of sit back and look and analyze it afterwards. It's trying to get out of your head during the actual process of creating it.
Exactly. And if you look at it from an outsider's perspective, you can find things there that can really just add so much value to what you're creating.
So how do you put those eyes on from an outsider? Like, how do you switch modes almost? Trying not to look at it as an outsider while you're doing it, and trying not to put too much judgment into it while you're doing it. But then, how do you switch the roles and afterward and look at it from an outsider?
I think it's really hard because I think it's very common for artists to get like really sucked into their own work. And for me, it just like one of the main things that helps me to do that is to like, first of all, just never draw nonstop, to always take like breaks and sort of look back on it with a fresh perspective. And lately I've been sort of, like working on different drawings at the same time. So like half a day I draw one thing and then I switch to a different painting at a different point of the day. And then I go back to the other painting. And that really helps me sort of snap out of it sometimes. On a larger scale, I think sharing my work with the web and sort of like seeing the feedback and sort of putting it, like taking it away from my computer and putting it like into the world always helps me sort of contextualize what I do and to see like, I guess, what it means to others and understand how that work is received outside of like my own little bubble, I guess. So those are ways of doing that. I think every artist has a different way of sort of like taking distance from their work from time to time.
Yeah, for sure. I think that sharing it is a really important part. Do you ever find that there's specific pieces that you do that you are a little hesitant to share, like you want to hold it back for a little while for any reason?
Yeah, I've had things where I really had to force myself to put it online. I try to be like consistent in posting art on the web. I have like a minimum number of digital paintings that I need to do every year to meet my personal goal. And, if I haven't done anything for a while, I'll try to look for something I can post. And there's always something in there that I'm like, that's just not my strongest work. It's like totally not interesting, or people are going to think this is boring or whatever. And then when I put it out there, it's usually, I've actually learned to just turn off that part of my brain to not think too much about how something will be received, because you never really know how it's going to go. I really can't predict what works well and what doesn't, Over all those years, there have been pieces that I thought were like really great, like my absolute best pieces, and then they get like largely ignored. And then there's some of my like just quick sketches that I don't think are interesting or important, and then they become like pieces that get a lot of positive feedback and that people remember. And yeah, there's no way of telling how that's going to end up.
Yeah, that's been kind of a common theme, a recurring theme on the podcast, is where, the exactly what you said, where things that you don't really like that much get like double the amount of likes that they usually do, or double the amount of feedback that they usually do, and vice versa. But that just goes to show that, it's sometimes it's not up to you. Like, it's all about that communication, and what you like might not necessarily be what resonates the most with other people. And some of the things that you might hate will touch somebody in a way that you could never even imagine. So I think it's almost the obligation, once you create something, to just get it out there and allow it to flourish.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I can't think of a cornier word.
yeah, but it's true. That's really how it is.
Yeah. Were there any things that initially held you back from your creativity, or things that you still maybe experience?
That's a tough one, because I've never really struggled that much with like what a lot of people struggle with, like art block. And like really heavy insecurity about my artwork. I've never really had that. I mean, I am insecure about my work, but I just don't really think about it too much, it doesn't consume me. So I'd say like the main thing that has held me back from my creativity and it sounds like a really lame answer to me, but it's really been my injury. It's, I got a repetitive stress injury in 2014. And that has been like the biggest obstacle in staying in touch with, I guess, my artistic side, my ability to just draw regularly and get all my ideas on paper. Because of that injury, I've really had to scale back the amount of work I do and plan it differently. And it's been like a huge obstacle, unfortunately.
It's still been really tough.
Yeah, it's like an ongoing thing. I think it's like in some ways kind of similar to like a burnout or something, which I haven't had either, but I've heard that once you have it, it never really fully goes away, or it always remains like a risk that it's a risk that it could return if you go back to your old habits. So I always need to keep that in mind when I'm drawing.
Do you have any tips for anybody to try to avoid that?
Yeah, like what I would tell myself if I could go back in time is like to just not draw for really, really long periods of time in a really stressed out manner. Because I got the injury when I was working towards a deadline for a client, and I was just ignoring all the signs that I was actually just exhausted and completely stressed out. And like I skipped lunch and I was just drawing like a maniac, on and on and on at my maximum speed. And I think that a lot of artists in art school as well, it's like really common to do like all-nighters to finish your assignments, and when you're a freelancer to sort of push yourself just a little too far to try and meet that deadline. I just think that that's a really toxic way of thinking, and it's really important to reevaluate that and to realize that stress is just absolutely not helpful, like ever. Sometimes it's better to just not meet that deadline, if it means your health, like your mental or your physical health.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be first and foremost over any particular job.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, not only the stress, but just it doesn't make art enjoyable. It doesn't make it fun anymore when you're, trying to cram in and meet those deadlines and not taking care of yourself. I think that's, the most important thing about art is to have fun with it, to enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Would
you say that then that's your the worst moment?
That's pretty close to my worst moment. I'd say that was pretty bad because, I was like completely freaking out when that happened, and I ended up not being able to really draw or write or do anything much with my right hand for like 2 months. And that sounds not so long. I'm sure that others have had it worse, but it was just like 2 months of just doing nothing. I felt useless, because drawing is actually just like everything I do. I didn't even realize how important it was to me until I had to stop doing it. So that was one of the worst moments. But I'd say my worst moment was my first year of animation college.
Really?
Yeah, that was kind of a dark time in my life. Let's see. That when I went, my first year was in Belgium, was in a Belgian animation school called GOSC, and I later switched at the end of that first year. I switched to a Dutch animation school in Utrecht, which is where I still am. And the one in Belgium it just wasn't a good fit for me at all. It was a sort of, I guess I want to say like artsy fartsy, but that's sort of like looking down on the kind of stuff that came out of that school, because they were just such talented teachers and animators, and they make like incredible stuff. It's just a fantastic school, but they had like a sort of idea of what was okay and what wasn't. And everything I liked was not okay in their eyes. So they really didn't like sort of girly stuff, like commercial stuff. They didn't like computers. They didn't like digital art. They liked the traditional technique, and they liked sort of subversive, unexpected, like really sort of experimental type of animation. And I just really couldn't, like I wanted to be able to do it, but I couldn't. It just didn't fit with me. It just totally destroyed my creativity trying to fit that mold, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like I had nothing to say artistically, because I just didn't fit what the teachers wanted. I felt like my ideas were just useless and bad, and maybe animation was not for me. And it was just, I don't know, it's like it took me so long to realize that it just wasn't a good match, that they just weren't the right school for me. So when I switched schools, and then the first few months at the new school, I was like, so many things were set right again. So many things felt okay again that I didn't even know would feel okay again. I'd say trying to like sort of trying to fit myself into the mold of that school was my darkest moment creatively.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think this brings up a really important point that I think a lot of people could relate to or might relate to in the future, is if, whether it's college or a job, if you find yourself in a position, especially with your art or whatever creative outlet that you do, and you find that it's, you're hating the work that they're trying to make you do,
Yeah.
or that, that they're looking down upon the things that you are doing, like, you shouldn't change what you do. Like, that's your heart telling you that, like, no, like, you shouldn't conform to what they want you to do, because in the long run, you're gonna, it might be okay for a little while, but in the long run, like, you're not going to be able to sustain like an art career doing stuff that you hate, or that you learned how to do that you hate. Like, you have to make that switch like you did, and just, never go against what your heart's telling you to do, because that's where the love is.
Definitely. And also just I think a lot of artists have this idea that like hard, you have to work hard and you have to challenge yourself constantly. And this is true. But it's like when it goes into the realm of like working hard at something that just doesn't align with your passion and with what you like, then it becomes sort of like it just grates at you, you just start to sort of like lose who you are. And I've seen it with a lot of people who have jobs somewhere that just like a job in visual effects or a job in animation that just doesn't really match, like the whole atmosphere and the style of working doesn't match who that person is. And then they feel really bad about it. But it's like, it's okay to just say like, okay, this isn't right for me, and to find something else. Because I really believe that almost everyone has a place where they will feel good and where they can flourish. But you need to like really look for it. You need to sort of change things in your life to get to that point.
And that's why the internet can be so good too, is if you are in a situation like that where you're kind of getting negative feedback, or people aren't, getting it, like the internet is great because somebody will get it, somebody will find that work, and you'll be able to find an audience there, and that can at least give you the confidence to keep going.
Yeah, that really helped me at the time. It was like a huge help. And also I ended up switching schools because I knew someone on DeviantArt who was going to a Dutch animation school, and I just sent him a note like, well, what's that school like? And then he told me his experience, and I was like, well, that sounds perfect for me. And then I just did it, and it just completely worked out in the end, And that was just so great, that like being able to get in touch with someone that can make such a huge difference in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Do you think that that's the reason why, aside from art being like a really hard thing to make a living in, do you think that's the reason why a lot of people that go to school for art, or different creative fields, end up quitting or end up not doing it for the rest of their lives and kind of go in a different traditional path?
Yeah, I think that's probably a big reason, because it's so personal. Like the art you make is so personal and so like close to your heart. And if you're like not really getting the chance to sort of do it the way you want, then yeah, people tend to shut down. And that's what I had when I was at that school, when I was at GOSC, and I knew that I didn't really know that there was like another place out there for me. I just thought that there was something wrong with me. Like I just totally shut down in that time. I stopped getting up on time. I would like miss classes. I started getting sick and just staying home all day and skipping school. And then eventually it just spun out of control, and I was like behind on all my homework, and I'd screwed everything up really badly. And I actually think that like a different part of my brain had decided like, this isn't going to work. But like on a conscious level, I didn't know it yet, but a different part of me did know. And that was sort of sabotaging it all. And I think a lot of people, when the situation isn't right for them creatively, they just sort of like, I guess, crash and burn or something. Or they just start to feel really bad about it, or they run out of ideas, and then they have to quit.
Even further, like once you do like pick that path, like for me specifically, and for a lot of people listening, you take this other path, you take this other career that is just something that you do to make money, that has nothing to do with creative fulfillment, and you get stuck in that story, and then, like you said, it's like your subconscious, it's like self-sabotaging when you start to think about, oh, like maybe I'll go spend an hour doing this thing that I used to love. It's just like, no, what's the point, And that's kind of the whole purpose of this podcast, is to push those people to just do it anyway, continue to create art or write or create music, and then make sure you share it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think the most important thing is to just get in touch with enjoying it, even if I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves for really good end results. They think, okay, if I'm going to sketch for an hour, then I do need to sketch an absolute masterpiece, which is like not going to happen. Almost no one has that. And people think that, okay, well, if I'm going to sketch for an hour, then I'm going to prove to the world that I'm, actually an artist at heart. And these are goals that are like not attainable, I think. And I think attainable goals are more like, okay, I'm just going to sketch like, I don't know, this plant in front of me for an hour, or like a bunch of gesture sketches or something. That's something you can do. And it doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just something you do. And if you have attainable goals, then you can really start like enjoying what you do, just like enjoying the feeling of being in a creative flow, of like getting into a certain mindset that's calming and relaxing. That's how I always experience it. Like if I don't put too much pressure on myself, I can really like relax from doing something creative.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about is like we were talking about before, not worrying if one leg's shorter than the other. It's just, just doing it for the enjoyment of it. And what would be like your best advice for setting attainable goals?
I think it would be to like focus on very specific things, like how much time you spend doing something. Like if you say, I'm going to sketch for an hour, that's attainable. You're not saying what you're going to sketch. You're not saying how good your sketches have to be. You're just saying it's going to be for an hour. And then usually the moment where you start to feel good about it or you start to enjoy it comes naturally when you're just doing it. And I also think attainable goals are things like those gesture sketches, like just saying like, okay, I'm going to draw a gesture. I'm going to learn how to draw dogs today or something. I don't know. I'm naming all these random things that I did as a kid. I would just be like, okay, I need to learn how to draw noses. I'm going to draw a nose for a while. And it just never was that good. I was never that happy with how it looked. It wasn't like my ultimate goal to be able to draw it like that. But it did sort of help me on a very, on the very, very long term. It started something that ended up working out. When you're just sort of practicing, you don't know where it's going to lead, and you shouldn't think too much about where it's going to lead. You should just be in the moment.
Absolutely. Like you said, those big, masterpieces are they take forever. They take a long time to develop the skills to make. So it's just about kind of tuning up the skills, tuning up your creativity as well, and then just finding that eventually. Now, the one thing that I love about what you're doing right now is that you have these mini tutorials that I think could be really helpful for people. I think specifically, I don't know if you did the nose one yet, but I know you just did the mouth one. And Can you talk a little bit about those mini tutorials?
Yeah, I have the tendency, I did a few tutorials for my Kickstarter as sort of like goodies, and they like spun out of control. I wanted them to be like good tutorials, so they ended up being like an hour and a half long each, and just going into so much detail. And I was like, okay, this isn't working. Like I want to make tutorials, but it just takes me too long to make them. It took me like a month. So I was like, how can I share my knowledge in a way that's like fast and easy to make, and that just like invites people to try it out? And that's how I came up with a mini tutorial. It's just like really simple steps, and it's like a video, so you can like, it's not just like just pictures of steps, but you actually see it being drawn. And I always feel like that would help push people to just try it, just for fun, just to see if that method works for them as a sort of starting point. And they're just so much fun to do. So I think I'm going to be doing them for a while.
Very cool. Looking forward to seeing a lot of them. And then again, we'll link that at yourcreativepush.com/Loish. Do you have a formula for balancing your time with all the things that you have going on now, and making sure to keep it, a little bit less stressful for you?
Yeah, my formula is definitely just keeping an eye on the clock, basically. At certain points, and then other points not. That sounds confusing. But what I do is like I try to sort of limit the number of hours I spend on certain things. One thing I've started doing, and it sounds extremely pretentious because I know a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do it, but I stopped sort of like forcing myself to get up early and be like, okay, I have to get everything done and rush my whole morning. Like I started just taking it easy and being like, okay, well, if I don't get all my work done, I'll just work a little later today. And then I try to like really just do a work day. And then when that work day is over, it's over. No more work, which allows me to structure my work day a lot better because I don't have like all day. I do a certain number of hours and I need to just use that time wisely. And then I really focus on that. And then I'm tired by the end of the day. And then it's like done with the work. I go home and then I keep my weekends free. So that sounds like I actually am avoiding work as much as possible, but I'm really like, when I start working, I focus so much that I need to actually limit the amount of time that I do it so that I don't crash and burn, basically. And yeah, I feel like if I just keep an eye on the clock and I make sure nothing drags out too long, I don't spend too much time doing one thing, I make sure that I have certain moments free so that I can be like, oh, well, what do I feel like doing right now? Then I can balance my personal life, social media and art. But it's the sort of thing, a question of routine and self-discipline.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point that I think a lot of people might kind of let go. It's if you let yourself stay up late to finish stuff, that's not always effective. If you set a deadline and can stick to it, I'm a big believer in Parkinson's law, which is, you are able to finish things in the allotted amount of time. So if you have like 2 weeks to finish a project, you'll finish it in 2 weeks. Or if you have 2 days, you could finish that same amount of work in 2 days. It's just like about when the deadline is.
Yeah.
So if you can set a self-imposed deadline for, all right, I have to finish this amount of work at this time, and then I'm stopping no matter what, and you can that you'll actually have the ability to stop working, then I think you can utilize that shorter amount of time more effectively. At least it definitely works for me.
Definitely. And also it just keeps it from, like, for example, if I'm just sketching, just doing some studies or just sketching mindlessly, it's really good for me to just say, like, okay, now enough is enough. Because at a certain point, like, you'll get to a point where you're warmed up and your sketches are good and you're enjoying it. But then at a certain point, they'll start to go downhill too. You'll start to sort of, like, I don't know, get tired of sketching, or like your concentration will start to get less. And then if you keep going at that point, you're only hurting yourself, basically, because you get to the point where it's just not going to get any better and you should be doing something else. So that's why I think it's really valuable to just think about how much time you're spending and to say, like, okay, well, I'll continue this tomorrow, to be sort of like self-disciplined about it.
Yeah. To have a good read on your gas gauge, whenever the tank's empty, it's just exactly. Like, what's the point of going on fumes?
Yeah, because then you just start to feel bad about what you're doing and you won't get anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say that art and creativity brings to your life?
I'd say more than anything else, a lot of freedom, because I've within being able to be artistic and creative, I've gotten so much room to sort of put who I am into my work. So my work has become like a way for me to express myself, and I feel so lucky to be able to do that as my job. And also, I get to be a freelancer, and being a freelancer means I get to make so many decisions that work for me. So I decide, what my workday looks like, where I work, how I work, with who. And that is just, that freedom is so meaningful to me. And I actually never expected that I would have a life like this. And it just feels so good. And I know that it's just because working creatively can give you that opportunity. It just means so much to me.
Beautiful. Do you have a greatest inspiration, or do you have a book or a YouTube clip or a song or anything that you kind of draw inspiration from, and that maybe we could do?
Unfortunately, like, my answer to that isn't very interesting. I don't really have a greatest inspiration. Like, my inspirations are really fragmented. Like, artistically, I'd say Alphonse Mucha is my biggest inspiration. He's an Art Nouveau artist. And when I saw his art when I was 16, it just like changed something inside of me and just made me see everything differently. And it's still, I'm channeling his work so much in everything I do. And then for other things, I mean, like, my art is very aesthetic. It's like just aesthetic pleasure. So I just want things to be pretty and enjoyable and maybe have like a certain, I don't know, feeling that's nice. But in my personal life, I'm really not like that at all. Like, one of the most inspiring things to me in my personal life is the TV show The Wire.
Nice.
Because it's so like well told and gritty and realistic, and shows how complicated the world is. That really inspires me on a personal level. And like movies like The Children of Men and Donnie Darko, like darker kind of things, are the things I like. And in terms of music, I mean, I listen to all sorts of stuff. I say one of my favorite, one thing that I could say inspires me a lot is the music artist Grimes.
Yeah.
Like, her whole look and the sound of her music and everything she does is like a big inspiration for me.
Oh, I saw the picture you did of her.
Yeah,
So
I
cool.
saw her live, and I was just like just blown away. It was so good. But it's like all for different reasons and different parts of my life. So like different aspects of my life have different inspirations, but there's not like one thing that is my main inspiration.
Well, that's so cool. And, well, by the way, I'm just outside of Baltimore, so The Wire has
Ah,
a specific meaning to me.
yeah.
I can definitely relate to that show a little bit
Yeah,
better.
as soon as people start talking to me about that show, it just like the conversation spins out of control.
Yeah, all right.
Huge
So
monologue about how incredible.
we'll cut it off. We'll cut it off
All
here. But
right.
I think, yeah, I think that's that show is like a staple. Like that's just for a long time. I think that's just going to be a classic show that, you can just either watch over and over again or that people will reference for a very long time. It's so well done. But yeah, I think that what you said is really important. Like you can draw inspiration from tons of different things, even if you are doing a certain discipline, to be able to be inspired by a myriad of different things. You can bring those things into your art too, and that will make it that much more meaningful and that much different than everything else out there.
Yeah.
So, Lois, it's time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today and just give them your best advice and push them to pursue their creative passions on a daily basis.
Yeah, my advice is to find your own way of doing things because that's one of the most valuable lessons that I learned. Every time I tried to make something work that wasn't working, I tried to change myself to fit a situation that didn't work for me. It didn't go anywhere. And as soon as I changed my direction and found something that felt good, things flowed on their own, and my creativity flowed, my ideas flowed. And there was a certain level of self-acceptance needed for me to understand what was right for me. And I think that, if you only have one life, in that life you're always only going to be yourself. You have to find the thing that is going to make you feel safe and make you feel nurtured and let you be yourself and find your own creativity. And some people think that means, drawing all the time or making music all the time, every day, thinking about it constantly. But other people just want to have that little moment once a week to just have a creative outlet. And everybody's got their own way. And I think if you search for your own way and you eventually find it, you get so much fulfillment out of it. And that's my advice.
Absolutely. This has been one of the most inspiring interviews that I've done. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us your story and just giving us your words of advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I really enjoyed it.
And you can find Lois on her website. That's loish.net, loish.net. On Facebook, she is loish.fans. And on Instagram, she is loisvb. I highly suggest you check out one of those two or both because you are very prolific and you post a lot, and there's a lot of inspiring stuff there so that people can get that on a daily basis. And of course, everything will be on our show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Loish. Lois, thank you again.
Thank you.
What a special episode. Thank you so much, Lois, for coming on. Just so much good stuff. But I think one of the biggest lessons is if you are currently in a situation where you feel like your creativity is being stifled, whether you're in school like Lois was, or you're in some sort of a creative job where it's just crushing your creativity, don't let it. And I'm not saying to necessarily get out of the job or to switch schools, but maybe. But if not, at the very least, do not let them bring you down. Do not let them change what you know is you, the creative thing that's in your heart, the thing that makes your soul sing. I don't know how else to put it, but you know what you love. You know the way that you can express yourself and communicate the things that you really care about and that really make you who you are. You know what it is. So don't let that happen. Don't let them kill that for you. Make sure you use your free time to continue to put that out there, to continue to put yourself out there, to share yourself with the world, because we need you. We need that. Do not let that die. That's what the podcast is all about. It's all about pulling that stuff out. So do not lose that, please. I am begging you. And also, I just love Lois's thoughts on just attainable goals. Screw the end result. It's all about the process, and setting attainable goals is the way to do that. It's all about the amount of time that you put in, not the quality of the end result and not the quantity of the stuff that you put out there. You can take that pressure off of yourself and just set small attainable goals. I'm going to put in an hour, I'm going to put in 10 minutes. I'm going to put in whatever amount of time, and I'm going to try to learn something, or I'm going to try to get better at a particular thing. Not, I'm going to create the next big thing. I'm going to write the next big symphony. I'm going to create the next big masterpiece. No, it's too much pressure. It's way too much pressure to put on yourself, and you're just going to be disappointed. It's all about just putting in the time and enjoying it. And that goes the other way too. If you are putting too much time in, take care of yourself, take care of your psyche, take care of your body. Don't get injured, but also don't push yourself too far that you're just tired and just making crap, because, then what's the point of doing it? But yeah, so much value in that episode. If there's ever one to go back and listen to, this is the one. And we even have some bonus content for the Patreon supporters. You can head to yourcreativepush.com/Patreon. If you want to sign up to support the show. Lois and I talked a little bit after the episode, and that is part of the newest bonus content, which is going up today. And we also have the SpeakPipe set up for the Patreon supporters to go and record your messages to be played on the show. So definitely go and check out that bonus content to all of my Patreon supporters so that you can get your voice heard. On Friday's show, we have Andrew Huang.
It's sort of like therapy in a lot of ways, is something that I'll say. Like, I definitely feel that being able to be creative and to kind of have agency over the way that I'm spending my time is like actually a health benefit in so many ways. Just being able to have the time and space to explore what you are passionate about, and also the satisfaction of bringing an idea to life, like something that started as a little seed of an idea that you had, and then is now a finished product that you can share with the world. That is immensely gratifying.
Andrew is a prolific musician and YouTuber who has some of the coolest videos that I've ever seen. He's always looking for really cool things to do, new things that nobody's ever done before. So definitely check him out if you'd like before the episode to see what he's up to see what he does. On Friday, we will have that interview for you to inspire you to go and get your creative work done. But hopefully today you were inspired. I know that you were. So go and get your work done. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing. I love you all. And we will be here for you on Friday if you need the push again. Go and get some amazing work done, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.